Aujourd'hui, je vais parler de one of those, at least in my opinion, lesser talked about banks, and it's credit card offerings, and that is US Bank. I feel more patriotic just saying that word. XenPuck here. Another few weeks, and yes, I have not run out of my own credit cards to rant about. And actually, these days I'm finally getting to cards of mine that I do use more. Today, I've just got one institution to talk about, and that's US Bank. Do you guys know it? Because for such a generically named US Bank, I've never actually seen one of these in the wild. I literally only know this bank through their credit card offerings, and frankly, my impression so far is pretty good. It does remind me, though, of how big this grand old country really is, right? I mean, I've lived in a handful of states in the United States and still somehow never even heard of a bank named US Bank until I started messing around with credit cards. Okay, tangents aside, right? I have no idea how this place is as a bank, but as a credit card issuer, I have had years of experience to at least enough to have a reasonable opinion, right? At the moment, I only have 2 cards with them, though there's a pretty high probability that number will go up to 3 within a year or two, so I figured I'd talk about that potential as well. So if you are intrigued by what I might say, please subscribe, like, comment, and share and all that social media buzzwords, or whatever, because I'm rich enough for me. I'll be great regardless. Now, the first credit card that I got from US Bank is probably their oldest and most well-known offering, which is their US Bank Cash Plus card. This card's big claim to fame is basically they let you pick 2 5% cashback categories out of a specific list. There's also the default 2% cashback category for some generic spending like gas and groceries. I'm going to ignore the efficacy of the 2% cashback category because honestly there's plenty of cards out there that just gives you a straight up 2% cashback on everything. So that group is pretty much moot, right? But the 5% categories, right, now that's an optimizer stream, because 5% on any category is generally as good as it's going to get in the current era, right? You do have to physically choose a 5% category every quarter, so that's a slight bit of a hassle. Personally, I just choose a 5% back on streaming and home utilities, right? Mainly because those are the ones that other cards cover poorly, at least, you know, when I first got this card. Okay, the main issue with this system, though, is that the list overall is very specific, let's just say, right? I'll read the rest of them right now, okay? The rest are cell phone, fast food, furniture store, ground transportation, movie theater, department store, clothing store, electronics store, sporting goods store, gym. Yeah. Why would they do fast food instead of dining overall? Why ground transportation instead of travel overall? And movie theater? Gym? I mean, seriously, how much money could somebody spend on these very narrow categories on a monthly basis, right? I can't imagine it'd be more than $200 for either like movie theaters or gym. Though, of course, now when I really think about it, I'm not really spending more than $200 on either, you know, home utilities or streaming either. So I guess that makes sense, right? I guess my main point is, if you do have spending on any of these categories that are that's fairly regular, and it's not in a category that's already covered by a different card that would probably make you jump through less hoops, then this card is appropriate for you, as it is for me, right? Helps that it has no annual fee, of course, so I'll keep it forever. Even if one day I might change one of the 5% categories to movie theaters just to cover, you know, going to the movies every week or month or so. Now, the next card that I got from US Bank is their first altitude card called Altitude Go. I say first because since I've gotten that card now, there's also Altitude Connect and Altitude Reserve. I really like the naming convention because altitude sounds fancy, right? But honestly, I'm not sure whether that fits the very first card, because this first Altitude Go card is actually the only one out of the 3 that doesn't have an annual fee. It doesn't have foreign transaction fee either. That's a nice perk. And frankly, this card is just, it's really decent, right? It has that same 2% cashback on generic spending like gas and groceries, just like the Cash Plus, so I'm going to ignore that same benefits for the same reason I already mentioned. But its real prize is that it also has 4% back on dining, and that's very fairly broadly defined, right? They mention specifically it covers takeout and delivery. I mean, honestly, I would just say if the vendor codes as a restaurant, you're good, right? So 4% on dining is the highest you can find pretty much anywhere on a card with no foreign transaction fee or annual fees. So this card is actually my generic go-to when I'm traveling because I don't have to worry about the acceptance rate, unlike Amex cards, or all these fees, right? So I keep this one on my wallet, in my wallet, almost constantly, right? It even has a $15 streaming credit if you use it to pay for a majority of streaming services for 11 months in a row. On the 12th month, that credit hits. Sure, that doesn't sound like a lot, but it's a recurring benefit that beats any 5% cash back on streaming, actually, even. Plus, think about it, it's 15% 15 bucks back on a card that doesn't charge you an annual fee, so it's literally free money if you're going to use a streaming service, or 8 anyway. For that last bit alone, I'd use it for one of my streaming services at least, and I do. So what card might I get next from US Bank? That, for me, would be the Altitude Connect, not the Reserve. The Reserve is trying to compete in the highest category like Amex Platinum level, and frankly, it just falls short at that category. Okay. The Connect, however, with its $95 annual fee, right, it's competing closer to Chase Sapphire Preferred or the Bank of America Premium Rewards. The main pluses of the Altitude Connect is the healthy sign-up bonus, which is worth around $500. It's constant 5% back on travel and a $30 streaming credit instead of the $15 on the Altitude Go, right? Also, I have to mention that the actual annual fee is also waived for year 1. So with all these perks, there's no reason to not get this card for its very first year. But my main problem is because I don't like canceling cards if I can help it, and I'm not super sure whether I can justify the $95 annual fee after year 1. Now, the Altitude Connect thinks of itself as a travel card, so there's also global entry credit, TSA global entry credit of $100 over 4 years, and also priority pass lounge access that's included, right? So I call the first thing the global entry thing $25 value, and I call the priority pass access, I value it at $50 a year. So hey, another $75 in value already to count against the annual fee. That's not bad, right? Now, it would be not bad if, the person getting the cards don't already have travel cards that cover these benefits. I obviously already do have cards that cover these in my Amex Platinum, right? It's not like anybody can use more than one global entry every 4 years or more than one priority pass membership, at any given time. So for me, these perks basically do nothing. Silver lining though, I do have to assume because the Altitude naming convention, it's very likely I could downgrade this card after year 1 to another Altitude Go, or possibly even a Cash Plus card, right? So at least then I wouldn't have to cancel any cards, right? So it's an interesting idea. Now, in conclusion, I find US Bank cards fairly niche, and yet so far those niches work for me here and there at the very least, right? I do wish that they would up the ante on their more premium offerings. Right now, their no annual fee cards are definitely worth keeping around for those fringe benefits that I mentioned. But why would I put the majority of my spend on any of their cards, right? I mean, hey, you work with what you got, right? So I wouldn't say, go out and get these cards first if you're just starting out. But if you are min-maxing for best cash back, US Bank definitely is worth a look, right? Do you guys have any of their offerings? Am I off my rockers? Let me know down below. Okay, cheers. I'll approach it.